Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join to our weekly Hebrew word study. And last week, I took a little side trip down a different passage, which is Isaiah 61, verse 1, comparing it to what Jesus read when they brought him the Isaiah scroll in the temple, and he read this verse to the people there. And last week, I gave you just a little bit of insight. I'm going to take you a little bit deeper today. These are things that I was made aware of or learned, came across as I studied this week, and I won't be able to convey the excitement that I feel. But I will try because the Hebrew is just fascinating. So, as you can see on your screen, we are in Isaiah chapter 61, verse 1, and it in the Hebrew is Ruach Adonai Yahweh Alai Ya'an Mashach Yahweh Oti Lebaser Anavim Shelach Ni. So again, what was so cool about this is Jesus read this because this verse applied to him, and but there are hidden meanings inside of here, inside this verse that I am going to offer to you as an alternative reading. Obviously, this verse has been translated by Jewish scholars, it's been translated by Christian scholars, and the Christian scholars pretty much agree with the Hebrew scholars in this translating, but they're using the same text. They're using the text that was created by a group of Jewish scholars called the Masoretes in about 300 AD, and they finished it somewhere around maybe 900, 600 AD. Took hundreds of years for them to finish it, where they basically debated on what vowel pointings to put underneath the consonants, because these little dots and dashes and marks underneath that we see underneath the main dark letters are the vowels that did not exist in the original Hebrew. In fact, there were no spacings between even the letters in the original Hebrew. It was all one long sentence of words with no spaces in between. And so the Masoretes spent hundreds of years determining where the words ended and begun and what vowel pointings to put underneath them. And so they were going to put these in according to their Jewish understanding, their understanding of God, their understanding of the Messiah. And again, this was after Jesus had come, and so in around 300 to 600 AD. And so there may have they put it in according to their own understanding. And what we know is that translations are always subject to the understanding and the doctrines, beliefs of the translator, because that's the only way they can do it. You only can do what you know, and you can only go through and apply what your understanding is. And so that's where as we look at this today in the 21st century from a different viewpoint, I see some things that I just want to share with you for, again, not to create a new Bible or a new doctrine, but to just give you something for uh, personal enhancement and growth is how I apply it to me. And the first one we come upon here is the word for because. It's ya'an, and so when we look at that word, um, it is translated as because. But when we look a little deeper in it, it can be also on account of, um, or in as much as, for the reason of. And as we look at uh, a translation of the Aramaic by Marcus Jastrow, um, we see here that this word has some very interesting meanings. So looking at the bottom, um, let's see, just paging back here. previous screen, we see that it's translate translated as, oh, I'm sorry, I have to look this up here. My page jumped on me here. So we're going to look at an ayin and then the lamed. So I'll give you a little bit of a quick understanding of how to look this up, the ayin and the lamed here on the side. Okay, here we go. So we go down to the bottom here and we see um, that it means to be within, or to be humble and poor. So there's a number of different meanings here as we look through this word as to what it means. And what we're going to see here is it can mean rise up, to go, to come, to arrive. It's not only as it's written here, being upon him. And so, again, I'm looking at these two words together, being upon him, alai, means to be within him. So again, thinking of the concept of where does the Spirit of God reside? Is it upon you or is it in you? And so from a Jewish standpoint, it may have been more upon them, but as we look at where the Spirit of God we feel is in our lives today, it's residing within them, within us. And so that's where we look at that word alai as being within. But then the next one is ya'an, which is looked at as account of or because. And that one has a very interesting understanding also, and looking that up with the Yud and the Ayin, and then the Nun, the Nun Sufit, we have corresponding to, not just because, but corresponding to. And then it goes even more interesting on the next page, where it says that the word for corresponding to and the word for to be poor or humble have the same letters in it, but they're in a different order. And so we'll see that's actually used in this verse here, that the Yud, the Ayin, and the Nun of Ya'an are also found down here in the word for Anavim, the Ayin, the Nun, and then the Yud being interchanged with um, I'm sorry, the Vav being interchanged with a Yod. And so this is the same word. It would have the same um, grammatical or numerical understanding. And so this is what's called a word play, that this word play for Ya'an, for because, is tied to the word for Anavi or Anabi, for poor. And that's even mentioned in the dictionary of the Targumim. And so we see this is just one of the many word plays that are going to come in of Jesus's mission to the humble. And so the word of why he's coming on account of the poor, and those two words are linked together. Then we get to the word Mashach, which is the word for Messiah, which is what we talked about last week. But notice that here it has anointed. Well, that is an implied understanding based upon what's needed to make the translation sound good. That is not in the original. There is no direction of a verb applied to make this either identifiable as a person's identity or as an action upon them. It is in a third masculine singular, which is typically thought of in the perfect or completed state. And so, again, this is kind of interesting, this anointing being completed on And here we have to decide who is speaking, who is the person, because it says that anointed Yahweh, and then the next word is OT, which is translated as me, but it's really a direct object. And what we struggle with here is who is this directed to? Who is the object of this verse? Is it the person being spoken to? Is it the person speaking? Is it Yahweh? It could be thought of as Yahweh, which again makes the fact that Jesus spoke it all the more uh, fascinating because of the reaction that the people in the synagogue had after he spoke it. What if they were thinking and understood it in the means that Yahweh is speaking about himself and that he's speaking about that he is the Messiah, the Moshiach, the Messiah coming, and that this direct object points back to Yahweh connected to the Messiah, and then for Jesus to come and say that he is the one, that he is fulfilling that, um, definitely would have caught their attention, definitely would have been noticeable for him, for that. It even gets more exciting as we look at this next word that's translated as preach good tidings, la vaser. Now, when I read this, obviously when you click on trying to get the translation of it, it will say to bear tidings, bear good news, bring good news. But this word, basar, began to resonate with me that I knew this word from somewhere, and it is the word for flesh. It is the word for body. And this preposition on the front, this lamed, means to, or it can mean with regard to. And that was, again, a very, very interesting um, point here that this has the ability to talk about the body and the flesh of the Messiah. What he was saying that this is all happening according to this body. I looked at the Raphael Sampson Hirsch as he broke this apart, and he's saying these letters, the bet the sheen and the resh means flesh or body of flesh that is sensitive to the body's role. Again, the deeper meanings that occur in the Hebrew, again, saying that if Jesus is up there applying these words to himself, saying, the Messiah, I am um, according to this body that was sent with a role, with a purpose, to come to the humble. And the next word is poor, translated as poor, but it's a word for humble. And so his role is to come in the flesh. Um, it's bizarre. It's to be there according in the flesh to those who are humble. And it's always unfortunate that this word is translated poor because in our 21st century, it gives us the idea of someone who doesn't have any money, who's broken, who's downcast. But the true, deeper meaning is that it's a humble person. It's someone who has a contrite spirit. And then he says he's going to be able to uh, be there in presence in a bodily form to those who are humble. And then the next word is shalachani, has sent me. That's nothing unusual there about the word shalach, to send. But then the next word, to heal, is very interesting. It's has the lamed preposition again, and then it's the habosh. And normally the word for heal is rapha. And so this one really caught my attention here that this is not to heal as we think about it in a normal. It is to bandage, and it is to take, and I'm just looking for this word here. I'm going to look it up for you. It is to take and put a bandage on something, um, which is quite interesting. So this is the chet and the bet, and then the sheen. So it's actually to saddle or harness something. It's to bind up. So there isn't really healing going on here as we have thought about it. It is to pull together, and it's actually similar to when you put a saddle on an animal, a horse or a donkey or a camel, and you begin to direct the life of that beast, of that animal. You are using it as a means to take them on a new pathway, to bring them into a new direction, to be guided and directed by them. And so setting in place this idea in their mind as to what's going to happen when the Lord comes, that our hearts are going to be directed by him. Our hearts are going to be guided by him, almost in the sense that he'll be saddling himself on our hearts to take us where he needs us to go. And then the next word, brokenhearted, is very interesting too, because it has the same letters, the sheen, beit, resh, as we see here for the word body. They're just another word play that comes in, a reversal of the letters, but the gematria, the numeric value, is the same. And so here we see in this same verse two word plays, one on account of and humility, and the other one is a word play on the body of, but then it is taken to a place of brokenness, of breaking in pieces, but it also has the ability to think of being a supplying, because here the shin beit resh is talked about being broken, which is the literal, but here it also is about repairing, to supply, to bring provisions to. And again, only Hebrew can do this, that use the same word to describe two very different functions. One is to break and be broken, and another one is to repair and to supply. And again, however this applies to us in this situation is just a beautiful thought process of what God does when He comes in and takes what's broken, takes control, and takes it to a place where He makes provisions and supplies. Even though our heart's been broken, He will do a repair on our hearts. And again, a beautiful expanded understanding of this verse. You may not agree with it. Obviously, no translator is going to ever agree with what I've done here with it, but the Hebrew does allow you to unpack it in such a way and look at the word plays and look. It's just too coincidental to think that there isn't a deeper meaning here because of these similar words that are just spelled in a different order all together in this verse. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it gives you a little understanding of what the Hebrew um, can do, and that yeah, you will just be enriched by it. And as I'm doing that, I'm looking and seeing here another word play. Look at the Shin Lamed Chet, and here we have Shin Lamed Chet right next to each other again. So this verse has so many deep meanings to it, and I'm so thankful that God's Word can do that for us. And I just pray that you're blessed and encouraged by this today. God bless you, and have yourself a great rest of your day. Bye bye.